The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, I'm David Shearman. Welcome to Politically Speaking. Politically Speaking is a program that gives you all the information about our local politicians, where we have one-on-one conversations with them. My guest today in this special COVID-19 somewhat abbreviated edition of Politically Speaking is Mayor Ian Boddy of the City of Owen Sound, and I want to introduce to you Tim Simmonds, who is the new city manager for the city as well. Ian, Tim, welcome. Good to have you both here.
Good to see you again.
David, thank you for the invitation.
Well, we're what, 3 months into COVID? Who's keeping track of time? 3 months into COVID-19, and the world has changed, and things are very, very different. Ian, let's start for a moment with you. What's happening? What has changed at the city now that we're moving into stage 2?
Well, I think we'll start to see Tim working on getting staff back with a plan of how we're going to provide more services. Certainly last week we got the lawn trimmers back out to try and attack some of the parks and get those back under control. So little by little, we're getting back towards normal.
Well, Tim, you I won't say jumped in, but that's really what you did, right? In the middle of COVID-19, you moved here to Owen Sound, and you jumped in with both feet.
Well, David, yeah, it's. I think that might be the number one question, or people ask me about the most. What is it like starting during the COVID pandemic? And mayor and council have been wonderful, but arriving at City Hall the first morning, just 3.5 weeks ago, and having to unlock the door and have somebody to meet me there and walk into a near bare City Hall of staff was probably the most interesting first day ever on any type of job. But since then, as the mayor said, staff, we have been recalling some staff here at City Hall as the province continues to ease restrictions, moving into that first phase and now just announcing the second phase. And the more staff I meet, I can't say enough of how welcoming and how great these people are.
Well, Tim, you come from Vaughan region, or Vaughan, I believe, in York region. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was most recently interim city manager for the city of Vaughan, and it does sit in York region and borders the city of Toronto.
So and how long have you been involved in municipal government?
In Canada, I've been working in municipal government. I'm in my 15th year now. And prior to that, I was in economic development for a community in the state of Texas. And that's where I got my first taste and start of sort of public life and giving back to a community. And it really hooked me.
Well, Ontario isn't Texas, that's for sure.
For certain. So I should probably preface that I grew up in the St. Catharines area, went to university in the United States, and ended up meeting my lovely wife, who was a Texan, and lived in the U.S. for nearly 21 years before I somehow sold her on the idea that Canada was the best country in the world and we should move up there and give it a try. And again, that was just shy of 15 years ago now.
Well, I know a few Texans, and I know how hard of a sales job that is. So you must be one heck of a salesperson, Tim.
Just a very
well, welcome to Owen Sound, and I'm sure we'll be conversing a lot more, and I'm sure that things will continue to grow and develop under your leadership here in the city. You touched a moment ago, actually, and both of you have touched on the bringing back of staff. Ian, you referred to the bringing back of people who are cutting grass and trying to get a handle on the, dare I say it, the weeds. But that's which I'm sure they're trying to do. I've seen that the flowers are starting to go in again and be planted, which is always a nice sign to see. What other things are going to be coming back in the next week or two? What can people expect? Or perhaps, Tim, that's a question for you because you probably got more hands-on than that.
Sure, I can add to it, and with the phase 2 opening this week, again, David, and it's been interesting because as the public learns about the gradual reopening with the phase 1 and then the phase 2, we too here at the city are attentively watching and listening to those provincial announcements. We don't have a heads up that phase 2 or any phase is happening until the public hears it also. So it's news to us, and we have to be in a reactionary type mode. I can tell you from experience now going through this, it's a lot easier to turn the switch off, so to speak. But the reopening is a much more complex task because you're starting to deal with how everything interrelates together. The mayor touched on a week ago, we had our crews out cutting grass again, something you don't really think about until the turf management becomes an issue and you start to say, hey, if we don't get the grass cut, the costs of replacing or the maintenance to replace that turf is going to be much more than having people out cutting it and keeping it in decent shape while we're waiting for uses to come back on the field. We do know, David, that our parks are open. Phase 2 will allow, I think, sort of up to 10 people at a time, still social distancing to be on those. Sports teams will be able to start to use facilities again, at least field-wise. They'll have to remain socially distanced. They won't be able to play games, but they'll be able to start their training and fitness again on those fields. Our parks are reopening. Playgrounds are still closed at this time, but our actual park and open space facilities are reopened. We're working toward a plan on getting City Hall reopened, hopefully in the next 4 to 6 weeks, so people can come back into City Hall. I know it's a vital location here in our downtown that people rely on and expect to be open, and the staff are eager to get reopened. So I guess the mayor also touched on our hanging baskets and flowers. If there's one thing with this COVID pandemic, having the ability to get our beautification and streetscape back out, I think gives people a little bit of that mental health that they're so needing right now, to be able to walk down the streets here in Owen Sound and be able to enjoy that. And so it's still a larger task than normal because with the complete shutdown, you don't have that lead-in time to start to get things ready. It's really an on, an off to an on, or an on to an off. It's not that multiple week lead up of getting things ready to take out to the streets. It's staff, can we have them here in a week? Can we get baskets hanging? Can we get the watering crews in, et cetera? So I think what our citizens will see is probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks, a majority of city services and city facilities reopened. We'll, of course, exclude some areas. The fire hall will remain special purpose for the fire. Bayshore Arena, as you know, is serving as a field hospital. It will continue to do so right now. So some facilities will remain closed, but for the most part, I think the citizens will be able to enjoy most of Owen Sound, what Owen Sound has to offer from our perspective.
Ian, the council itself is continuing to meet using a virtual setting online, and that will be continuing, I presume, for a little while yet?
Well, we'll look at that. For now, we'll have a meeting next Monday, so it will be the same setup with myself and 2 councillors to move, and second, the formal motions clerks and city manager will be in the room. We'll look at potentially bringing everybody back and having plexiglass screens between each councillor. We'll look at our options. Certainly the dialogue works a lot better when we're all in the same room.
Sure. And it makes, if I can put a plug in for Rogers TV, it makes better TV too.
Well, so, I guess it's better if there's, more people to look at than the mayor with an ugly beard, but.
I don't think I'm supposed to laugh at that joke, but.
Yeah, actually, Tim, you're part of the cast too, so we watch for everyone. We watch for everyone. Although I must say the mayor certainly does get a lot of core time on air. That's to be sure. A quick question for you, Ian. There's been some interesting conversation on social media about the proposed purchase of property up by one of the schools and Timber MacArthur Park. Can you just briefly outline the process that we're in and the stage that we're in, because it's not an easy process, but I think it needs to be made quite clear.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, as there always is in social media, and it always seems to come from the same sources. But anyway, we'll leave that aside. Council approved looking at it twice at two different council meetings, and we approved an 8-step process, and I think we're at step number 3, where we're consulting with the public. There was a request by a property owner across the street, and the idea was, from his point of view, that we could amortize the cost of running the water, the wastewater, and the services down the road allowance to benefit both sides. So there's no agreement of purchase and sale in place that would provide to the property to any one person. The request just happened to come from Barry's Construction if we would consider it. So we're considering it. Depending how far we go, it's possible that we would look at giving that property to affordable housing, which we know there's a shortage of in this area. That's important. We could leave it as is. We could, we could shrink it down. There's a whole bunch of different options that we'll look at. Right now, it's just hearing from the public, and in accordance with the Parks Master Plan, which allows the transfer of parks. It is, we're going through the process where we are listening to the neighbors and what the use of that land is. Certainly people from further apart, further off than that actual neighborhood, want to give their opinion on transferring parks in general. But, over the years, the city has had a lot of property that they data banked, or land banked, I guess would be a better phrase, to sell someday to developers. This isn't different, other than it seemed to be included as a park. There's other lands that aren't called a park, but they're sort of the same. But we are going to go through the process. All of council, positive, unanimous, looked at the 8-step process, approved that process, and we'll go through that process to the end to make our decision that's appropriate at the time, with all the information on the table that comes to us at the time.
So the process is ongoing. It's not and it's simply at this point gathering information.
Absolutely gathering information, yes. This third step is gathering information from the neighbors.
Mm-hmm. So I guess all we can say is stay tuned, because it'll probably be a conversation piece in the community for a while yet. Quite
a while yet, I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to also ask you, too, Ian, we've had a significant number of, well, almost all of our events that are traditional for the summer, things like Salmon Spectacular and Summerfolk and Emancipation Festival and Canada Day and everything in between, postponed or canceled or just delayed for a year. Do you think that'll have a negative impact on the city, or do you think that we'll be able to continue to persevere and make the make a silk purse out of a sow's ear with no prejudice towards hogs?
I suspect that it's going to have somewhat of a negative impact. That's why we put those events on, because it's part of the services we provide to people, allows us to celebrate. This year would have been not only Canada Day, but June 1st, 1920, was when Owen Sound City started as an incorporated city versus being a town in Grey County. So we had a couple of things to celebrate, and it's always good for your community to celebrate, get out and get together. We will get through this, of course, we'll survive, but it's nice to be able to toot our own horns and go out and share things.
Sure. It's, I guess we'll just have to delay the blowing of our own horn for a little bit.
Yeah. Or find a different way to do it, I guess.
That's true. That's true. That's very, very true. Tim, I wanted to ask you how what was your what shall I say this the primary reason you decided to move to Owen Sound? I mean, I'm not trying to try to put you on the spot, although I am, but I'm curious. You know, what you were down in the big city. You were, probably had a pretty interesting kind of job. All of a sudden, you moved up here to Grey County.
No, I think, David, it's a great question. I'm certain a lot of people probably have asked that also. Um, yeah, I think we're at a point in time, and it's interesting, the pre-COVID now, I think is how we term it. Um, I have four beautiful children. My oldest is in university, and the three are all still in between high school and elementary school. But it was really about what I think people are looking for. It's about quality of life. And I can tell you straight out, my commute every day in the GTA was easily about an hour 15 to an hour 30 for about a 50-kilometer commute on the 401. So that's sort of a rolling parking lot every morning for an hour and a half, and a rolling parking lot for an hour and a half in the evening. So when you factor in 3 hours a day sitting in a car, and an opportunity that Owen Sound presented. I'd like to compliment Mayor and Council, the executive search firm that they used, who put the opportunity in front of me. And when you really start to dig in and see what the city is all about and where it's going, and maybe the term to use is the bones here in the city. It has so much potential. On top of that, the quality of life that it brings myself and my family, I think is a unique sort of selling feature, calling card that we can explore further as we come out of this COVID pandemic, and use that to talk to others about. There are many people, my peers and colleagues, not only that I worked with, but worked in other municipalities in the GTA. Quite frankly, they're not disillusioned, but they're getting tired. They're getting tired of whether it's driving themselves or being on a train for an hour or two each day to get to a job, as opposed to being able to spend that time with their family or enjoying the things that they like to do. And from interview number one with mayor and council here, it really shone through the love that they have for the city, and you get to that passion when you can enjoy life, and so that was probably, I guess, the foundation of why I looked hard, and then was very fortunate and blessed to be chosen as the candidate and the city manager here.
Well, it's interesting you should say that, Tim, because one of the things that I've always said about Owen Sound, and I myself have lived here for about for 20 years now, is that we're surrounded by rocks, trees, and water. What more could you ask?
Very true.
It's a wonderful place to live.
Well, it's close enough to everything, and people ask me that question. We are 2 hours from the city. We're about 2 hours from one of the largest international airports, or the largest one in Canada. We're at the doorstep to the world, really, but we get to enjoy that, as you mentioned, the rock, water, and trees that we have around us. So it's beautiful.
Well, who knows? You may turn into one of the best salespeople we've got for the city. Is that part of his job description, Ian?
Well, certainly, yeah. I hope he's bought his snowshoes.
Shush! We won't tell him about that part, will we?
I put the snowblower on special order, so.
Oh, good. Yeah, you will discover that it's not called Snow and Sound for nothing. And you'll see the impact as city manager, I guess, when you have to deal with the snow removal budget. But I'm sure your colleague Dennis will keep you well appraised of that situation.
David, I have to add in real quick. Sorry, somebody said, well, that's the snow belt up there. And I said, snow belt? I said, that's the buckle in the snow belt. So I knew what I was getting into.
Well, I was talking to someone who is in human resources who does a lot of hiring out of Toronto into Grey County. And she was telling me that there are two things she always says to new hires that they will have to get when they come to Owen Sound. The first is a very good winter coat, and the second is a decent set of 4 snow tires. So you've been warned. You've been warned. I was going to also ask you, Ian, what? Oh, gee, I've just lost my track of my question here. Oh, I know. With this moving forward, with the city moving forward, and in context of Tim's comment earlier that you don't know what's coming from the province, and I presume from Ottawa, are we still concerned about the finances for the city going as we go through this time of COVID? Because I know that taxes have been delayed and there was loss for transit money. Are the finances still a concern?
Well, the budget's going to be totally different, that's for sure. And when you think about it, right from March 13th, I think was the date that the province declared their emergency, and just before that, every day seemed to be new, and city staff were making a decision today that erased the one yesterday because it was coming so fast and so quick. So yeah, we've got a loss of revenues. Our budget has to be the same. We have reserves that protect us, but at the same point, those are hard-earned reserves that have taken years to set aside for things like infrastructure. We'd rather not dip into them. We hope that our province and federal governments will come through and support municipalities. So financing is of concern, but we're not going bankrupt. We're not on the edge. We're not in danger, I guess. But of course, it's a concern. We're not going to get to do some of the things that we had hoped to do with our budget this year.
Now, the 10th Street Bridge is still on track, is it not?
We had a report the last council meeting coming up 2.5 weeks ago from Dennis that on budget, on time at this point, and definitely on quality. Clearly with COVID, probably our next report or one after that, there's going to be a bit of a delay that we're starting to fall behind because they couldn't have as many people working at the same time. So that we expect that's going to happen, but right now on time, on budget, and getting the quality of work we want, for sure.
And when's the next report from Dennis Kefalis due to City Council? At this meeting, or will it be at the following meeting?
Well, just at the last meeting 2.5 weeks ago, so I would suspect that it's going to be at least a couple of more weeks. It won't be at this Monday's meeting.
Okay. Although I'm sure that if there is something urgent, that he'll get time on the agenda if it's necessary.
Yeah. And it is going smoothly. This is a very professional company that's been retained to look after it. They do a lot of bridges. They know what they're doing. We can always call a special meeting for anything if we need to. But I don't see the need. We'll get a general report again in a month or in 6 weeks or whatever the Dennis's plan is.
Tim, when you accepted the job, did you think that you'd be supervising a major infrastructure project like that, or is that a major infrastructure project coming from where you're coming from?
No, listen, it is a major infrastructure project. Bridges are a tricky business, and there are not every firm in the world can do it. I was very pleased to know about the firm that Dennis and council had chosen through that procurement process. And I'd reiterate and just sort of mirror the mayor's comments. It is on time and on budget. Dennis foresees it moving that direction. That next report should be in July as an update. But coming into the position, I knew about the project and its importance to the city and as a major thoroughfare and traffic mover, people mover. It's a good project.
Are we going to see other capital projects going forward as well? I know there was this repaving of 16th Street on the east side that was going to be done, and are those projects on track to be completed as well?
David, yeah, Dennis has mentioned, gone through a list briefly with me of capital projects. Thus far, none have been officially taken off a list. I believe he's waiting to tender some projects in the next week or two. And that sort of plays back to bringing staff back to City Hall. So we have the appropriate support and facilitation staff in our procurement team, our finance team, ready to assist Dennis in getting those tenders out and back in as quick as possible so we can make up some construction season time, so to speak, and have roads paved and other projects completed.
Yes, because the moment you let tenders and get them out, that means people are back to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Ian, is council anticipating any speed bumps in the next little while, do you think?
We haven't anticipated anything the way this has gone. It comes at you whether you anticipate it or not. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a speed bump that's coming at us, but I would guarantee there's one there somewhere. Minor, major, we don't know, but there's always challenges. That's part of life.
Sure. Do you think the main street will be changing its look? I've seen that a number of restaurants have indicated they're closing. Will that have an impact on the city?
Well, certainly, where you have a lot of small businesses that are operated by local people, they've taken it over the last number of weeks, and some of them will have difficulty holding on. We did hear of Norma Jean's closing, but it was at a point that the owner wanted on in the next couple of years, and this made it happen. We have hung the flower baskets in the last couple of days. We're going to be working with different restaurants and cafes to encourage them and find a way to use the sidewalk for street side cafes and some different thinking. I know the DIA is looking at different, even before this, was looking at changing the branding and updating the marketing and different ideas. So there's some neat things that have been going on and in the works already that will continue. And of course, my dad was in business for 39 years on Main Street. I grew up on Main Street. It's always evolving. It's always changing. It ebbs, it flows, and it will continue to do that.
That sounds like a really upbeat way of looking at it, Ian, because certainly the city has an interesting heart. We've got just a minute left, so I wanted to just close by saying, Tim, to you, welcome to Owen Sound. If you're not talking to me, you'll be talking to my colleague Mary Jane Murray. And Ian, I'm sure our paths will cross again, even though we can't be here in person. We're making this work by Skype, and you just never know how technology will affect the business of the city going forward. Thank you both.
David, I encourage everyone, just before I'm off, that even though we're opening up, we're in the second phase, I encourage everyone, wear a mask, be safe, wash your hands, be as vigilant as you've been the last couple of months, and let's make sure this virus doesn't swing back on us when we're not looking. So keep doing what you're doing. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Tim. And friends, thank you for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll see you again.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.